Well, good morning and welcome to another week on my allotment. Happy Mother's Day. It's Mother's Day here in the UK, so I wish all the mothers in this green and pleasant land a good day, and I hope your children managed to spoil you in some way. And a special hello to my mother, who I know watches these videos. And it's the rules have changed slightly in Wales now. The Welsh government, have deemed fit to allow people to meet other households in their back gardens. So it's about plus 6 degrees centigrade, and the wind is bitter, and it's not set to improve much today. So how many people can put up with sitting in the garden in mid-March remains to be seen. I suspect quite a lot of them will be moving indoors. So, what's happening on the plot today? Well, I'm going to continue with the very boring and mundane task of just running that bent fork through the top of all the beds. The forecast for the last few days has been dry, but the reality is it's been wet. And this week, earlier in the week, we had some ferocious winds. And speaking to Bridget, after the storm had passed, she said it's the most ferocious winds she's ever experienced on this site. And, you know, in my 5 years here, it is extremely exposed. There is nothing between us and the Atlantic Ocean. And the wind blows across this field. And it is brutal. But all through the winter, everything has stood up and we've had no problems through all the storms we've had. But the winds we had this week knocked one of the sheds down. I shouldn't laugh. And I'll show you a quick clip in a minute. But yeah, we had quite a bit of damage, and there was a lot of stuff lying along the hedgerow where it was blown off people's plots and pinned against the hedge. Anyway, my plot survived. How much that little low pallet wall or fence protects me, I'm not sure, but it must do some good. Anyway, everything on my plot is fine. And so today, I've brought up some broad beans. I've planted broad beans in these pots here. They haven't come up yet, but I'm going to put them in the cold frame here because I need more room in the greenhouse at home. The greenhouse at home really is starting to kick off now as the nighttime temperatures improve. You know, it's about 5 or 6 degrees at night now, so it's up high enough, I think, that most, you know, hardy seedlings should germinate. So I need more room there, and with that in mind, I've brought my tray of sweet peas that are going to grow on the allotment. I'm going to put them in the cold frame. And this tub here, I'm not sure if it's too early, but I'm going to have a go, and I'm going to sow some radishes. And again, that pot's going in the cold frame around the back of the shed. And, you know, we'll see. I've got plenty of radish seeds. You know, you get several hundred seeds in a packet. I've got various packets. They come free with different magazines and so on. So, you know, nothing ventured, nothing gained. So I'm going to do that today. And then it's a case of just turning over the soil on the beds, as I say. And, yeah, not a lot else, actually. You know, if I wasn't so far ahead and ready for spring, then right now would be, excuse me, runny nose, I would be frantically getting ready. But I'm on top of everything, so it really is a case of, you know, just waiting. But we'll have a quick look now at what I've got going on at home. I've pricked out all my brassicas now, so they're cauliflower, a few successful lettuces, waiting for the beetroot to come up, some broad beans that I sowed before I had the problem with the beans getting waterlogged, Brussels sprouts and broccoli, and then I've sowed some herbs. I don't know what that one is there. Some spring onions, Brussels sprouts, some marigolds, Those are broad beans, leeks, and then some onions up here. In the conservatory I've got some marigolds and then green and red cabbage. And up here in the spare bedroom I've got some very advanced tomatoes, and they're all successional and staggered, coming down to the last lot which I sowed yesterday. Well, this tells you how ready I am for the growing season. I'm having a spring clean in the shed. Everything's covered in a fine layer of soot from 6 months of fires. And you don't notice it till you lift something off a shelf and then there's a pure white mark left. So even my rough and ready housekeeping standards are peaked, so I need to have a clear up, and I'm doing just that. Well, as long as my mum or my wife don't inspect, I'll be fine, or my daughter. Well, my observation of life is that nature, which is all powerful, just has a way of weeding out the weak and the old. It does it with every species in its own way. And so it is with allotment sheds. And the strong winds we had this week have, I'm afraid, put paid to Paul's shed. It's amazing, you know, the storms and so on that we've had through the winter. This shed, which has never looked good, stood up to them all those storms they named. But the strong winds we had this week, which Bridget said, and she's been here since this field was first ploughed, were the strongest winds she's experienced on the plot, you know, have caused quite a lot of damage. That shed fell onto Barry's raspberry cane frame, and Simon, with his greenhouse there, lost a couple of panes, which he's now seems to have cleared up. The grass was all over the road. And actually Paul has cleared up as well, because this shed looked like a grenade had gone off in it, and he's obviously been up, or somebody has, and just folded it in on itself to tidy it up. But when I came up yesterday, as the winds were slowing down, there was detritus all over the field and against the hedge where it blew. So sorry for Paul, he's lost his shed, but that's nature's way of saying time to invest in a new shed. Thankfully, my plot didn't see any damage. Well, I thought I'd have a break from the norm and not talk about me. And as it's Mother's Day, I thought I'd do a little bit of trivia and talk about the phrase mumbo jumbo. Do you see what I did there? Mumbo jumbo is the expression we use for language that seems nonsense and to have no discernible meaning. For the origins of this, we travel to Africa with the explorers and missionaries of the 18th century. One of these travellers, Francis Moore, wrote a book of his adventures called Island Parts of Africa, published in 1738. In one part, Moore includes the passage, "A dreadful bugbear to the women is called mumbo jumbo, which keeps them in awe." Mumbo jumbo was a legendary spirit in villages across Africa, who was used by male tribal leaders in order to keep the women of their tribe in line. Good luck with that. One of the major tribal customs was for a man to have several wives, and bitching between them was a frequent occurrence. Dare I say, some things never change? This book has no political correctness in it, which is why I enjoy it so much. It is what it is. When an outbreak of backbiting backbiting became intolerable, the husband would dress up as Mumbo Jumbo and visit the main culprit in the dead of night and scare her rigid by shrieking and hollering. The trouble-making missus was then tied to a tree and given an old-fashioned thrashing by Mumbo Jumbo. Clearly he was not to be messed with. The phrase travelled back to England and became associated with the meaningless rambles of Mumbo Jumbo. Jesus, that is awful, isn't it? How times have changed. A nest egg is a person's savings which they will try and keep adding to. In the English countryside, prior to factory farming, chickens used to live naturally and lay their eggs in nests. To encourage hens to be more productive, it was common practice for farmers to place a porcelain egg known as a nest egg into the breeding ground. Apparently it worked. Likewise, a small sum of money given to a person as a nest egg was thought to encourage them to add to it. Well, there you go. The next one is grasp the nettle, and I won't do it, but I do remember telling my children when they were very young that that's where the phrase comes from, is if you grab hold of stinging nettles firmly in your hand, they won't sting you. It's the light brushing against them that causes such painful stinging. And so I proceeded to demonstrate to them and then encourage them to do the same, upon which all three of them were stung quite badly. Which goes to tell you should never trust anything your dad tells you. Actually, they did get their own back once, because I, to show them that there was no power in an electric fence which was crossing a footpath, I grabbed hold of it. It gave me one hell of a kick. Taught me a lesson. Yes. Yeah. On my plot now, I have 14 of these blue barrels. They're all full of water. And I watched a video from Steve on Green Side Up. He's got a good YouTube channel. And he was talking about feed, and specifically tomatoes. And I thought he had a good idea, and it's one I'm going to pinch and adopt, where he's going to create some comfrey feed, when in the spring and summer when comfrey is growing, and he's going to put it into one of his barrels, and he's going to dedicate that as a very weak comfrey feed specifically for tomatoes. So what I'm going to do with this, I mean, it's full up at the moment, but when in a few months time I get the comfrey growing and I chop it, and I'll use a small bucket to make it, once it's made, the comfrey tea, I will pour it into this barrel, and it will become very weak, and then I will use that specifically for the outdoor tomatoes that I'm going to grow. I thought that was a good idea. What I might do is use this on half the tomatoes, and on the other tomatoes just use water, and see if I notice any difference. So I think I'll do that in the summer, and I'll see how that goes. Well, this is another indicator of how on top of everything I am at the moment. This piece of wire grill is what I put over my wheelbarrow to riddle the compost through into the wheelbarrow, and then I put the stuff that doesn't go through it back on the compost heap. Well, the frame has been there for 2 or 3 years, and the wooden frame fell off it and was rotten, so I got hold of some new wood, or fairly new, much better wood. I've rebuilt the frame, I've painted it, and I've even found a little bracket to hold it there, neat and tidy. My OCD on the plot just gets worse and worse. Well, unusually I'm going home for lunch. So I'm going to call that a day. But I've managed to work my way around the whole plot, and I've done that with the 2 rakes, and just opened up the soil surface, so let the warmth and the wind and the sun in. And it can be a little bit disheartening that, you know, I did that earlier in the week, and it takes a couple of hours, and then, you know, we had heavy rain and it's compacted again. But it's one of them jobs that you just don't think about it, just do it, and, you know, eventually the warmer, drier weather will come, and the soil will be all the better for having had the surface warmed and dried. So, you know, I don't know, it's all very weather dependent as to when I can start putting things in the ground. I have actually, we went out for a drive yesterday, and of course in England the garden centres are open, so we went to a nursery nearby, and I got some more garlic. There are a couple of things we can't have enough of on the plot, and that's garlic, you know, probably the healthiest food you can eat, both raw and cooked, and onions. Onions are a staple in just about every dish that Cheryl does. And she told me today we're down to the last 3 onions that we've got stored back at home in the garage, and so, you know, of course, you know, we're not going to have onions ready for months. So she's going to have to start buying them soon, and I'm not sure there's a way around that for me. You know, they call sort of May, June time the hungry gap, and that's for a good reason. So I don't know of any way of having onions ready now. So, you know, it's just, you know, and that's why, you know, we'll, despite my best efforts, we will probably never truly be self-sufficient in fruits and vegetables, because there's always a gap with the storage. And if you know any different, then please let me know, because, you know, I'm very willing to learn. You know, some of the best things I've learned in the couple of years I've been doing this channel have been from you people. So yeah, that's another week on the plot finished, and, you know, who knows when I'll start to get other stuff, you know, beetroot, more broad beans, hopefully, if they're not all finished. But whatever, I will be back next weekend. At some point I'm going to go out and give the caravan a good clean, in the anticipation that maybe at some point this year we'll be allowed out. But I will be back here on the plot next weekend. So thank you for watching. Thank you to all those who've subscribed. I do appreciate it, and look after yourselves, and I shall see you next weekend. Bye for now.